This is the face of evil, the enemy of God, the prince of darkness, Satan, Lucifer, the fallen one. For millennia we've been taught to fear him, to fight him, and to believe that he is the source of all suffering, the serpent in the garden, the ruler of hell waiting to devour our souls. The entire belief system of the West is built on this cosmic war between light and dark, between God and this demon. But what if I told you that this is a lie? Not that evil doesn't exist. Evil is all too real, but a lie about its identity. What if I told you that this image of a demon with horns and a pitchfork is just a distraction, a purposefully designed smokescreen, a straw man set up for us to attack, while the real enemy hides in plain sight? An enemy not hiding in hell, but an enemy we've been taught to worship in heaven. This isn't a modern conspiracy theory. This isn't some New Age fantasy. This is the core, forbidden belief of some of the first and most influential Christian communities, the Gnostics. These were the people who wrote and protected the texts we've explored before: the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip. These were the people hunted by the Roman Church. They were called heretics. Bishops ordered that anyone caught possessing their texts was to be destroyed right along with those books. Why? Why such a brutal suppression? Because the Gnostics didn't just challenge a few rules or rituals. They dared to expose what they believed was the greatest deception in cosmic history. Their forbidden secret, the secret they died to protect, was this: the God who created this physical world, the God of the Old Testament, the God who declared, "I am a jealous God, and there is no other," was not the supreme God, the merciful Father that Jesus spoke of. They believed he was a lesser entity, a blind architect, an arrogant jailer. And here is the biggest shock of all. Jesus did not come to earth to save us from Satan. He came to save us from that very Creator God. In today's video, we aren't just revisiting a forbidden chapter of history. We are opening a theological cold case. We will investigate the evidence these early Christians used to make their staggering accusation. We will examine the texts that were buried for 1,500 years. And we will identify the real enemy revealed by the forbidden Gospels. Brace yourself, because what you are about to hear will challenge everything you've ever been taught about God, about Satan, and about the very purpose of human existence. To begin this investigation, we must do what the Gnostic thinkers did. We must look directly at Exhibit A, a core contradiction, lying right in the pages of the official Bible. A contradiction millions of believers have silently felt, but have been forbidden to question. It is the case of the two gods. For 2,000 years, Orthodox Christianity has operated on a core assumption, an assumption you were never allowed to question: that the God depicted in the Old Testament, Yahweh, and the loving Father revealed by Jesus in the New Testament are one and the same entity. We are taught to accept this. But let's be honest with ourselves. Have you ever read the scriptures and felt a certain dissonance? A clash of personalities, a fracture in theological logic, something you simply couldn't reconcile? This isn't some modern skepticism. This is the very case file that perplexed the earliest Christian thinkers. Consider Exhibit A, the psychological profile of the Old Testament deity. This figure, as depicted in the ancient texts, is a deity of rules and retribution, a warrior god. In Exodus, he explicitly states, "I am a jealous God." He commands total warfare. In Deuteronomy, he orders the Israelites to utterly destroy the Canaanite tribes, leaving none alive. This is a deity who drowned the world in a flood, turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt merely for looking back, and established an unyielding system of justice. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This is a God of absolute order, obedience, and retributive justice. Now, consider Exhibit B, the testimony of the new witness, Jesus. Millennia later, Jesus arrives on the scene, and it seems a primary objective of his ministry is to systematically overturn that very code of law. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." He says, "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." The contradiction is stark. This isn't a minor course correction. This is a 180-degree reversal of the entire ethical framework. The God of the Old Testament demands fear. Jesus teaches that perfect love drives out fear. How? How can a single, unchanging entity be both the author of retributive law and the wellspring of unconditional forgiveness? The standard explanation from Orthodox theology is termed progressive revelation, the idea that God was simply educating humanity, step by step. But to any critical thinker, this explanation feels flimsy, intellectually unsatisfying. It's akin to a parent teaching their child 2 plus 2 equals 5 for millennia, then suddenly sending a new messenger to say, "Oh, actually, it's 4. That doesn't signify progressive knowledge, it signifies that the initial instruction was incorrect. And this is precisely where the Gnostics enter the picture. They weren't naive believers. They were the philosophers, the mystics, the early logical thinkers of Christianity. They looked at this same theological plot hole, and they refused to accept the convenient explanation. They dared to posit a different hypothesis, one that was profoundly logical, remarkably elegant, and utterly terrifying. They said, "This isn't one deity undergoing a personality shift. These are two entirely different gods. This isn't one good God progressively revealing himself. This is a cosmic conflict between two entities. One, the God of the law, of the material realm, and the other, the God of love, of the light." This was the greatest, most dangerous heresy in Christian history, because it didn't just challenge a rule or a ritual, it challenged the very identity of the Creator God. This opens an even more terrifying question. If the God who created this world, the God of the Old Testament, is not the supreme, true God, then who or what is he? And how did the Gnostics arrive at this knowledge? The answers lay buried in the Egyptian desert for 1,500 years. We must turn to the physical evidence. If you're going to accuse the God of the Old Testament of being an imposter, you cannot come empty-handed. You need evidence. You need testimony. You need a source that was silenced. For 1,500 years, the victors of that early theological war, the Roman Orthodox Church, were the only voice we could hear. Their version of the story was the only version. The books they chose became the Bible. The books they banned were burned and presumed lost to history. Until they weren't. The year is 1945. The location? Nag Hammadi, Upper Egypt. An Arab farmer named Muhammad al-Samman is digging in the desert for fertilizer. He strikes something hard. It's not a rock. It's a tall, sealed, earthenware jar. Believing it might contain gold, he smashes it open. Inside there is no gold. There is something infinitely more valuable. A collection of 13 ancient books, bound in leather, preserved almost perfectly by the dry desert air, for over a millennium and a half. He had no idea what he had found. But the scholars who eventually examined these codices, they knew. This was the single greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century for understanding early Christianity. This was the jackpot. This was the forbidden library. These were the very texts that had been outlawed. The books that bishops like Athanasius of Alexandria had ordered destroyed in the 4th century. Some defiant monk or community of Gnostics, had taken their most sacred texts, sealed them in a jar, and buried them, hoping that a future generation, a generation like ours, would one day unearth them. This wasn't just another version of the Bible. This was a completely alternate Christian operating system. It contained over 50 texts, including some we only knew by name from the angry letters of heretic hunters. It contained the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary. Yes, that Mary, Mary Magdalene, confirming her role as a leader and visionary. But it also contained the text that formed the very core of their cosmology, the text that answered the question we just asked. If the Creator God isn't the true God, who is He? This was the key to the entire case. A text so secret, so profound, it was allegedly revealed by the resurrected Christ Himself. It's called the Apocryphon of John. Its very name carries weight. Apocryphon means hidden away or secret. This was not a gospel written to be preached to the crowds in the streets. This was a record of a private revelation, purportedly given by the resurrected Jesus Himself to one of His most trusted disciples, John. The text begins dramatically. John is sitting on the Mount of Olives, grieving, confused, and filled with doubt after his master's crucifixion. He's wondering, why did such a good man have to suffer? How does this system even work? And he is praying. He is praying to the God he has always known, the God of the Old Testament. Suddenly, the resurrected Jesus appears before him. The heavens tremble, but He doesn't come offering platitudes. Instead, He does something shocking. He laughs. He laughs at John's prayer, and He asks the game-changing question, "John, why are you praying to that God? Why do you put your faith in a lesser divinity?" This is the core awakening moment. Jesus, according to this secret text, begins to unveil to John the truth about the cosmos. A cosmology completely different, more complex, and more stunning than anything Orthodox religion had ever described. He explains that above everything, above the heavens, above the angels, and even above the God who created this world, exists the true God. This is not a king sitting on a throne. It is a realm of pure light, an unknowable, absolute, non-judgmental, non-jealous, non-angry perfection. It is called the monad, or barbello. It simply is in absolute fullness. From this realm of light, pure spiritual entities, or aeons, were emanated. They were expressions of the divine mind. One of these was Sophia, also known as wisdom. And here is where the cosmic accident occurred. Sophia, in her intense desire to create something on her own, just like the highest God, decided to make something. But she did it alone, without the consent of her masculine counterpart, and crucially, she did it outside the realm of pure light. This solitary, ignorant act of creation produced a cosmic miscarriage, an imperfect product, a distorted entity, born in the darkness, completely cut off from the light of the true God. And the secret book of John describes this first creation in terrifying detail. It was not a beautiful angel. It was an entity with the body of a serpent and the face of a lion, with eyes like flashing fire, a perfect symbol for arrogance, the lion, and deception, the serpent. He was a product of ignorance, and therefore he himself was blind. This secret text of John gives him a name, Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth. This name is the key. This is the imposter, the adversary we began investigating. We have just unlocked the core secret. We know what was created in the darkness. But what did this blind, arrogant creature do next? And most importantly, how did he manage to deceive humanity into becoming the God worshipped by billions? We have him, the name, Yaldabaoth, the form, a distorted creature of arrogance, born in darkness, separate from the true God. So, what did this blind creature do next? The Apocryphon of John describes his very first act. Isolated in his own dark cloud, unaware of the realm of light, pleroma existing above, Yaldabaoth looked around. He saw no one else. And in the supreme arrogance of ignorance, he declared, "I am a jealous God, and there is no other God besides me." Does that line sound familiar? It is the foundational claim of the Old Testament deity. Exodus chapter 20. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. Isaiah chapter 45. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. This is not a coincidence. This is an identification. The Gnostics presented their 100% match evidence. They declared, the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, is Yaldabaoth. This was their most shocking accusation, that for millennia, humanity had been worshipping an imposter, a lesser God, a cosmic error, who had declared himself the supreme creator. And his rap sheet gets worse. He wasn't just arrogant, he was jealous. Yaldabaoth decided to create his own kingdom, a copy, a pale imitation of the realm of light he dimly perceived through his mother, Sophia. He created the physical heavens, he created the planets, the stars, and he created his own underlings. He didn't have angels of light. He created the archons, the rulers. These were the prison wardens of his system. But he lacked something. He envied a reflection he saw from the realm of light, the image of the primordial human, anthropos. He decided to create his own puppet in that image. He fashioned Adam out of clay. But the puppet was lifeless. It lay inert. Yaldabaoth, in his ignorance, did something he didn't understand. He tricked his mother, Sophia, and breathed into Adam the breath of life, which was actually the divine spark, a fragment of the realm of light he had unwittingly stolen from her. And instantly, Adam came alive. He became intelligent. In fact, he was more intelligent than his own creator, because he contained the true light within him. Do you understand what this implies? This is the core truth of Gnosticism. This material world is not a gift. It is a prison designed by a jealous God. The human body is not a temple. It is a cage of flesh, created to trap the divine spark within you. All of us are exiled gods, princes and princesses of the realm of light, tricked into confinement within a material prison and ruled over by our very captor, one whom we mistake for the supreme God. So, if Yaldabaoth, the Old Testament God, is the warden, then who is Satan in this story? In the Gnostic system, Satan isn't the primary adversary. He's merely a low-level enforcer, another archon. He's the most aggressive prison guard, the one who enforces the rules of the prison. In other words, Satan is the bad cop, while Yaldabaoth is the good cop and the prison owner simultaneously. Both work for the same system of imprisonment. We have been tricked into focusing on fighting the guard, forgetting that the real enemy is the prison owner who designed the entire system. Now, we have an even bigger problem. If we are trapped in a cosmic prison, ruled by an imposter God who thinks he's all-powerful, if everything we perceive is part of the deception, how do we escape? How can we be saved? We need someone from outside the prison, someone carrying a message from the true God. We have a problem, a cosmic problem. If we are exiled gods, if we are trapped in a material prison, ruled by an imposter God, who thinks he's all-powerful, the one who wrote the rules, how do we escape? How can we be saved? One thing is certain: you cannot be saved by someone inside the prison. Salvation cannot come from the very system that holds you captive. It must come from the outside. And this is the true role of Jesus. According to the forbidden texts, this is the core, most shocking, and yet most hope-filled truth of Gnosticism. Jesus was not the son of Yaldabaoth. He was not the messenger of the Old Testament God. He was not sent by the warden. He was an emissary from the true God, from the realm of pure light, the pleroma that exists above it all. He was an infiltrator, a secret agent who donned a human body like a sophisticated disguise to slip into this material prison, undetected by the archons, the prison guards. And what was his mission? This is where we must discard the single biggest, most foundational concept Orthodox religion has taught us. His mission was not to die for our sins. Think about this logically, as a discerning American audience would. If Yaldabaoth, the warden god, is the one who created the system of sin and law, like eye for an eye, then Jesus, dying as a blood sacrifice, is merely an act of paying off the warden himself. Such a sacrifice only reinforces the power of the prison system. It doesn't liberate us from it. No, his mission was far more radical. He didn't come to die for our sins. He came to liberate us from the illusion that we were sinners in the first place. He didn't come to pay our debt. He came to tell us the debt itself was fraudulent. His mission wasn't atonement. His mission was to bring gnosis. Gnosis is a Greek word. It doesn't mean faith. Faith is believing something without proof. Gnosis means knowledge, direct, experiential knowledge. Jesus was the bringer of secret knowledge. He was the teacher who slipped into our prison cell in the dead of night, shook us awake, and whispered, "Wake up. You are dreaming. This is not your home." What was that gnosis? It was a 3-part instruction manual. 1. The knowledge to remember who we truly are. Immortal divine sparks, fragments of the true realm of light. 2. The knowledge to recognize what our prison is and who our jailer is. An illusory material world ruled by an imposter god. 3. And most importantly, the knowledge of the escape route. The Gnostics believed that when we die, our souls must ascend through the physical heavens, passing through toll booths or checkpoints guarded by the archons, Yaldabaoth's wardens. If you don't know the passwords, the secret knowledge Jesus taught, the archons will trick you, wipe your memory, and cast you back down into this material prison for another lifetime. Jesus came to give us those passwords. His entire purpose wasn't blind worship. It was apprenticeship. To learn from him, so we could become like him and make the escape ourselves. So, if this knowledge was so crucial, if it was the only map out of the prison, who did he entrust it to? Who did he trust to hold the escape plan? He didn't entrust it to the budding institution. He entrusted it to the one who truly understood the message. So, Jesus had the gnosis, the escape map from the cosmic prison, a set of passwords, a secret knowledge that could free the soul from the grip of Yaldabaoth and his archons. A logical question follows. Who did he entrust with that map? Who would he trust with a secret that dangerous? A secret that, if revealed incorrectly, would be extinguished, or if misunderstood, would become useless. He wouldn't entrust it to an institution. Institutions always seek control. They are part of the system. He wouldn't entrust it to a crowd. Crowds always look for a king, a ruler, something Yaldabaoth is only too happy to provide. No, he would entrust it to an individual, someone prepared, someone who truly understood him, not just with the mind, but with the soul. And this is where we must look at the most intense confrontation in all of early Christian history. The confrontation not between Jesus and Satan, but between his two leading disciples, Peter and Mary Magdalene. In the forbidden texts we found at Nag Hammadi, a pattern repeats constantly. Peter is always portrayed as hot-headed, impulsive, and the representative of the external faith, the faith based on obedience, rules, and structure. He was the perfect man to build a church. But Mary Magdalene, she is consistently portrayed as insightful, calm, and the recipient of the inner teachings, the secret teachings. The clearest evidence lies in another text, found at Nag Hammadi, the Gospel of Mary. This text describes a dramatic scene after Jesus has departed. The disciples are confused, afraid. They don't know what to preach, and Mary Magdalene steps up to comfort them. She begins to share with them the teachings Jesus had secretly revealed to her alone. Teachings about how the soul escapes the archons. And how did Peter react? He wasn't joyful. He was indignant. In a famous passage, Peter turns to the other disciples and says, "Did the Savior really speak privately with a woman about things we do not know? Are we to turn around and listen to her? Did he prefer her to us?" For centuries, Orthodox theologians have tried to explain this passage away as mere jealousy or a reflection of the sexism of the times. But the Gnostics knew the truth was far deeper. This wasn't a battle between man and woman. This was a battle between two ideologies. Peter represented pistis, faith, blind faith in an external God, faith in a hierarchy, a church. In other words, Peter, unwittingly, was building the perfect religion for Yaldabaoth, another prison, based on obedience and guilt. Mary Magdalene represented kenosis, knowledge, direct knowledge, liberation from within. She wasn't interested in building an empire on earth. She held the keys to escaping earth. The conflict between Peter and Mary was the conflict between the prison and freedom, between worshiping the warden and following the liberator. And when the Roman Church, built upon the rock of Peter, rose to power, can you guess what the first thing they did was? They had to neutralize the keyholder. They had to destroy Mary Magdalene's credibility. They couldn't kill her. She was already dead. But they could kill her legacy. They turned the inheritor of Gnosis, the apostle of the apostles, into a prostitute. It was the most successful character assassination in history, and it hid our escape map for almost 2,000 years. So, what was the motive for this crime? Why were the Gnostic texts suppressed so brutally? It wasn't just theological disagreement. It was a battle for control over the human soul. Now we have all the pieces of the case file. We have the adversary, Yaldabaoth, the lesser creator, who impersonated the supreme God and turned the world into a prison. We have the liberator, Jesus, the emissary from the realm of light, who brought the gnosis, knowledge, for escape. And we have the keyholder, Mary Magdalene, the inheritor of the secret knowledge, standing in opposition to Peter, the institution builder. And we know the outcome. Peter's institution won. Mary was smeared. And the Gnostic texts, like those found at Nag Hammadi, were ordered to be burned. The final, most crucial question is, why? Why such a brutal, systematic, and absolute suppression? If this were merely a theological disagreement, they could have debated. But they didn't debate. They destroyed. To understand the motive, you have to think not like a theologian, but like an economist, like a CEO. You have to understand that when Peter's Roman Church merged with Constantine's Roman Empire, it stopped being just a spiritual movement. It became an organization, a global corporation. And every corporation has a business model. What was the business model of the Orthodox Church? It was utterly brilliant. The problem? Humanity is defective. You are born in sin, original sin. You belong to Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, from the moment you are born into his material world. The solution? You cannot save yourself. You need an intermediary. And luckily, the Church holds the exclusive franchise on that solution. They are the only authorized intermediaries appointed by that very God, Yaldabaoth. The mechanism. You need their priests for baptism, to erase original sin. You need them for confession, to manage your daily sins. You need them for last rites, to ensure you get into Yaldabaoth's heaven. In short, their business model relies on you being a slave to sin and them being the sole key holders to your freedom. It's a perfect system of control. Now, consider the product the Gnostics were offering. The problem: humanity is not sinful. You are a sleeping God. You are imprisoned in ignorance. The solution: you can save yourself. You need no intermediary. The mechanism: you need gnosis, knowledge. You don't need a priest. You need a teacher. You don't need blind obedience. You need personal awakening. Do you see the problem here? These two models cannot coexist. This is an existential battle. If Gnosticism is true, if you can save yourself through direct knowledge, then the entire structure of the Orthodox Church, the entire hierarchy of priests, bishops, popes, the entire concept of sin, atonement, and obedience, is a fraud. It wasn't just heresy. It was a lethal threat to the institution's very existence. The Gnostics weren't just saying the Church was wrong. They were saying the Church was part of the prison. They were the jailers, the ones keeping humanity asleep by preaching fear and guilt instead of liberating gnosis. And that was the motive. This wasn't a debate about angels. This was a war for the control of the human mind and soul. The Roman Church, backed by the military might of the empire, did what any monopoly corporation would do when faced with a competitor, offering a better, more liberating product. They destroyed the competition. They couldn't win the argument of ideas, so they resorted to violence. They burned the books. They hunted the believers. They branded knowledge, gnosis, as heresy, and they succeeded in erasing this truth from history for 1,500 years, until that jar was found at Nag Hammadi. Now, the secret is out, the evidence is in the light, and we, living in the 21st century, are the first jury in history able to see both sides of the case. So, what is the choice? And what does this mean for you, right now? And so, the case is closed. 1,500 years after the evidence was deliberately buried, it has been brought back into the light. We've seen the motive, we've seen the method, and we've identified the players involved. Now, the jury is you. What we've uncovered today isn't just a dry history lesson. It isn't some irrelevant ancient tale. Because the prison that Yaldabaoth built, the prison that the Orthodox Church, unwittingly or wittingly, reinforced, isn't just a cosmic structure. It is a prison of the mind, right here, right now. It's built with the bars of fear. It's constructed with the walls of guilt. And it's locked shut by the chains of the core belief that you are defective, a born sinner, unworthy of greatness. This system tells you that you need an external intermediary to save you, that you must obey blindly, that you must fear the God who created you. But the Gnostic message of Jesus, safeguarded by Mary Magdalene, says the exact opposite. It says you are not a sinner. You are a sleeping God. It says you do not need an intermediary. You only need knowledge to awaken yourself. And it says you should not fear your Creator. You should transcend Him. If you've watched this far, if you've ever felt that something wasn't right with the Orthodox story, if you've ever looked up at the night sky and felt a strange homesickness, a feeling that you don't truly belong here, if you've ever felt a deep hunger for truth and knowledge, rather than the comfort of blind faith, then this video was not an accidental find. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are not heretical. You are a divine spark, beginning the process of remembering. You are the prisoner who has realized they are in prison. And according to the Gnostics, that is the first and most crucial step towards escape. You now stand at a crossroads, just as the earliest Christians once did. You've heard both sides of the case, and you must render your own verdict. Having heard all this evidence, which do you find more plausible? Who is the true adversary of humanity? A. Is the enemy Satan, an external demonic entity, the tempter, who lures us into sin and rebellion against a benevolent Creator God? Or B. Is the enemy the system, a prison of the mind, a material illusion created by a lesser Creator God, the Demiurge Yaldabaoth, who keeps us trapped in ignorance and fear? Take a second and really think about that. Comment A or B below. This debate isn't just about ancient history, it's about the future of our souls. Whether you agree or are outraged, let me know why. Join the community of those who dare to ask the questions. This channel isn't for everyone. It's for those who seek the truth, no matter how potentially terrifying that truth might be. If that's you, join us. Because the truth buried is far greater than you can imagine, and we are just getting started digging.